Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. Communication, so critical in our lives every single day. No matter what we do, our personal relationships, professional, it all comes down to effective communication. We're going to look at that today through the eyes of AI, artificial intelligence, the presentations you make, the way you interact with people. And we're going to get some deep insight on that from a gentleman with a company that helps you deliver the best presentations possible. Effective Presentations is the company he's with. Jordan Jones is with us on the program today. Hey, Jordan, how you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Can't really complain. Nice, beautiful Monday morning. I love what I do, so it's easy to come in, and I'm excited to work with you, talk with you about AI and public speaking and how it's kind of changing the playing field on exactly how we deliver presentations, especially in the modern day. There's so much that has changed. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Great having you here. And I'm intrigued on how AI translates to effective communication and presentations. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, a lot of us have already used it. Maybe when we're doing a search, maybe with ChatGPT, we want to get maybe a better, a document or ideas. I've used it manipulating images, just kind of for fun. I'm intrigued to see how this translates to presentations. I really am.
Yeah, and most people they don't think of using AI in a public presentation or a presentation at all. But there's so many different tools and so many different use cases for it. And it goes, like you were saying, everywhere. It can be used for computer programmers. Computer programmer or people that aren't computer programmers can now develop computer programs with AI. It's such a powerful tool, or like what you were saying, where it manipulates images or changes images or even creates them. Well, all of these pieces can also help your presentation, because now if you need a specific image, well, you prompt the AI exactly what you want for your presentation. Well, now you have an entire image created for your presentation. And it's kind of crazy because you can take your information, plug it into AI software, and it will generate you an entire presentation with slide deck, pictures, bullet points, you name it, all from either your information or just a simple little prompt. It's quite insane what this technology is making available to just the average person.
My first view of using it for that purpose is editing. You get so much that comes back, and you really need to fine tune it to what you're using it for, because AI, sometimes it nails it. Sometimes there's a lot of fluff and a lot of extra that goes along with that. Um, Take us through the journey. Let's say somebody's doing a presentation. How would that translate to making it the best presentation?
Well, I would start pretty much right at the very beginning. And this is something we typically teach in our courses. And it goes into, when you're going to present, you always have to ask yourself, what is in it for my audience? Why is my audience there? And once you come up with that reason, well, now you have the baseline for why you are presenting your information. Well, now that you have that baseline, you take that prompt essentially, and you ask, or you take that and use a prompt saying, write me an opening statement for this presentation. Well, now your entire opening is pretty much created for you through AI technology, and you don't have to do the legwork of thinking through, how do I want to open up this presentation? It's done for you. Same thing with the ending. It can wrap up the entire presentation. It can link right to the very introduction and link and tie that whole presentation together, giving you a very nice bookend close, because you're tying in the intro and outro because AI has done that for you. So right at the very beginning, you can start with just openings.
Let's go a little bit deeper in it delivering you. So it's going to give you the script. It's basically going to tell you what to talk about, but it's not really in your words. How do you go from that, from generating AI to making it personal?
How do you do that? Well, you take your own personal experience. And this is something that I often tell clients is, just because you see somebody like, say, Steve Harvey, the host of Family Feud, go out and present that show, doesn't mean that everyone can go out and present like Steve Harvey. It's just not going to come out the same way because everyone's different. So you have to take that information and craft it around yourself. How does it make sense for you to share that? Say you created a power opening with AI. How do you craft that into your own message? Well, you take the script and you use it as a guideline. You don't use it as this is the absolute exactly what I'm going to say word for word. I'm going to read it from my script and my entire audience is going to know exactly what I'm saying, but they're going to tell that you're reading it and it's not authentic. And I think that's the key here is you take the information, you use your own words, your own verbiage, and your own style of presenting, and you deliver that message. And if you generate an opening that you don't like, well, keep generating them until you find one that you do like and does fit your personality.
My biggest challenge here is people can confuse me with Steve Harvey because my last name is Harper, Steve Harper. Just kidding. No, I'm serious. It happens all the time. Um, how do you suggest somebody deliver a presentation? So you could write it yourself. You could have AI write it for you. Here you are. It's presentation day. It's a whether it's a PowerPoint, whether it's a Zoom video, is it bullet points that you would have in front of you? Obviously, you don't want somebody reading. You want it coming from within.
Yeah, absolutely. Having bullet points, you don't want to read verbatim, word for word, your script because, well, your voice now changes. When you're reading, your voice stays in a very flat, monotone affect. And if you've ever listened to somebody that's very monotone for an extended period of time, naturally you start to tune out. So I would recommend you have your bullet points. And then sometimes there's the argument of, well, I have really key information, really key details that I need to get across to my audience. Well, in those cases, have that completely written out with that exact number that you need to be able to share with your audience. But for the most part, if you can't present your presentation from bullet points, you're going to struggle delivering that presentation because you're probably not prepared enough to actually go out and deliver it if you can't do it from bullet points.
Personally, I hate reading. I really do. Even if I'm asked to, when my voice is not dealing with a cold, to even host a fundraiser, which I have one coming up in 2 weeks. They're going to send me the stuff in advance. I'm going to look it over. I'm going to breeze through it, but I hate using the word hate, but I loathe reading. So in what you're talking about, the finite details, I might turn around and say at that point, you know what? I'm going to read it here because I want to make sure that every detail is clear. So you're telling people, yeah, I'm going to read this right now. I'm looking at something here. I want to go to your journey, Jordan, and how you overcame uh, feeling uncomfortable delivering a presentation. How did that work for you?
That was a long, strenuous journey. I think back to when I first started, my very first day of public speaking 101 in community college. I absolutely bombed, gave the worst introduction speech ever. And it was probably the worst speech in that entire class. And it's kind of ironic because now I teach the subject today. And the one key thing I would say to getting comfortable in front of a group of people is change your mindset of it. A lot of people, there's an effect in psychology called the spotlight effect, where people essentially think that everyone's paying attention to them and them only. But in reality, everyone's paying attention to themselves, not you as the individual. And as soon as you can start wrapping your mind around that, it becomes a lot easier, a lot more freeing to go out and just be authentic, be yourself. Who are you? And I think public speaking, to really get comfortable with it, you have to be comfortable with yourself and your thoughts and ideas. And the way that you get there is by speaking.
And being
Practicing.
honest and being authentic.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love the spotlight effect. It's so real and relatable. And if you can relate to people, you're halfway there. So many times I believe, and please correct me on this, that we get up there and the pressure is on to deliver, but people just want to hear from another person helping them out. Um, I was at a networking meeting 2 weeks ago, and I haven't been at one. I'm embarrassed to even say this since COVID. So I jumped back into networking. This was the first one early in the morning. And I looked around at everybody, delivering the 30-second speech. And I said, So this is what you people do at 7 o'clock in the morning because it's been so long, and I was being real. Like I've worked in morning radio for decades. I kind of sleep later now because of that. And I was being honest with everybody and they related like, yeah, this is what we're doing. There's life before 6 a.m. Relatability is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I love that you say that because that is what, if you think about, when I think of relatability, I always just think of stories. And the reason
Yeah.
being is if you think about stories throughout our just entire existence as a species, it's how we pass information down. But we could just have bullet points of information, stats, data, stuff that is hard ingrained. But none of that is really passed down. I mean, yes, it is in literature and science literature, all that stuff.
Sure.
But when it comes to actually sharing information, the way that people retain it the best is through stories. And the reason why? Well, it goes right back to what you just said. It's how we relate. Everyone in this world can relate to something some way, somehow. If you think about there's a lot of things such as eating. Everybody has to eat. Every human can relate to that. So you can think about just food and have a relation with people because people can connect with that. Even from all over the world, people will, I'll use this as an example. You go anywhere in the world, people will know what a cheeseburger is. And you guys can relate upon that. I know it's a silly idea, but it's true. We have these little pieces that every human can relate with, and it's about finding what is it that I can do to relate with this audience. Going back to what you said about, wow, this is what you guys do in the morning. I don't know if you were on stage when you said that at that networking event, but the reason why that was so relatable was because A, it was true. And when stuff is true, it's typically funny, especially if you deliver it with the right tone, which you absolutely seem like you did. And it probably got everyone in that room to laugh because it's true. Yeah, this is what we're doing in the morning. And it kind of breaks that ice. And when you break that ice, you start to become relatable with that audience. You get that first laugh, and everything kind of just flows from there. So I would say that relatability piece is probably the most important thing that you can do when it comes to trying to build a connection with an audience.
I love what you said about stories. There's a story in everything. We have a story. There's a story with your name. There's a story in the data. Everything is a story, right?
Absolutely. There's stories and everything. It only comes down to what is a story that is worth telling. And I typically think of
Mm.
as long as there's change, there has to be some sort of drama, conflict, or change in that story to be worth telling. Because I could say, well, I went out of the house today, I drove to work. Cool. Awesome. Is there actually a story there?
Yeah,
And
good
it's
for
no,
you.
but
Hey.
yeah, good for you. I did the same thing. Hey, you're relatable, right? But if you think about it, I drove to work today and I got cut off by a semi and I got thrown off the road and I almost died. Well, now you have a really story that people are going to want to engage with and listen to versus, yep, I woke up and drove to work. So you have to have that change in that story. Otherwise, it's not really going to have a purpose and people aren't going to relate with it. We love drama. We love that conflict. It's in everything.
Yeah, let's microanalyze the drive to work story. So you drove to work, I drove to work. I assume you did. I don't know if you're working from home.
Not today. Not today. I did drive in today.
Gotcha. I drove into work today and picked up coffee. And my story is that I'm trying Green Day, the band's new coffee. It's called uh, Pink Bunny or Punk Bunny. And it's actually really good. It's got like chocolate tones to it. Never had it before. Didn't know Green Day, the band, had coffee available at 7-Eleven convenience store. So it kind of made my day, made it kind of fun. That was my drive in today. That's my story.
No, but that's cool because now you're sharing something that people typically wouldn't know. You're sharing information. It's like, oh, that's cool. That's an interesting idea. Never thought of it. So that would be a change in perspective. You never would expect a punk rock band to have a coffee, especially at no what other place than 7-Eleven. You would not really
I
expect that.
highly recommend it too. It's really good.
And then, there you go. Now you're like, hey, I would really recommend this coffee. It's delicious. It's good.
What's your story? What happened in your drive in today?
Let's see. Oh, well, so I have a I have a hefty drive in. I drive
Oh,
about from northern Colorado all the way into Denver. So it's always an interesting drive to say the least. You always see stuff on the road. I try and just listen to audiobooks. I thought I laughed earlier when you're like, I can't stand reading. I loathe it. I'm like, Me too. That's why I listen to audiobooks because it's a lot easier to
Ah,
just
yeah.
drive and listen to audiobooks rather than that. And in my audiobook this morning, it actually, I always look at just different things that will make me better as a person. And right now I'm reading one of Brian Tracy's books about about power and influence. I can't remember the exact title. It's an audiobook, so I don't look at it all the time. I kind of just hit play on my phone and it goes through my speakers
Sure.
and I just listen to it. But he brings up points of how do you get people interested in you? And it's not so much about you being interested in you, it's people being, how do you get people interested? And it's not just a direct of, hey, look at me, here's my story. It's more so you asking them questions that's going to prompt a story or prompt them to say something and get them talking about themselves. And he ties it back into Dale Carnegie in his book on how to win over friends and influence
Influence
people.
people.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact title. It's one of those ones that I really should memorize, but he ties it all into that. And it has to do with just being an active listener, wanting to hear what people say and being interested in what they're saying and actually listening. And I think that's about 80% of communication is just listening.
Thank you for sharing that because, first of all, um, I have 3 books sitting at home. I even went away for a weekend, and my goal was to read those books, or at least some of them. I still didn't. I'm going to try audiobooks. I have never immersed myself into that. And yes, it's a great reminder in terms of one of the most valuable things you can do is just ask questions. That's it. Ask questions and listen, of course.
Yeah, ask questions,
Mm.
clarify if you don't know things. I was talking to my brother this weekend who's a firefighter and he's now getting promoted into a senior role and teaching people that are just coming into their, I'm trying to think of what the proper word is for firefighters coming into their stations, I suppose. And I always find it so interesting. He's terrified of public speaking, but he's willing to go into a burning building and save
Right.
people. I'm like, dude, you got your priorities backwards. You're crazy. I don't understand how this is hard for you. But the point I'm making with this is even if you don't know where you're going with your information, if you just take the time to pause, think about where you want to go and really think about it and don't put too much pressure on yourself and just start talking, well, people will probably listen as long as you say it confidently. And I think that's something a lot of people misunderstand. They get so freaked out and like, oh, public speaking, it's so hard. But instead of freaking out about it, just take the time to pause, breathe, and really gather your thoughts.
So on point. And the power of the pause is so underestimated. And many of us don't do the pause because we think that it's so long of time that went by with the pause, but it's not. You're actually doing a favor to the listener because now they can collect their thoughts. Yeah, great reminder. When it comes to AI, let's jump back into that. Some other ways that we can use that to deliver an effective presentation.
I would recommend just thinking about your content, write it out, put it in AI, and have it summarize it for you. What are the key points here? There's so many different use cases for it. You could put it in to create your entire presentation if you want. I wouldn't recommend you just run with it. I would definitely say proof check everything, make sure you're going through it over and over again and practice it. I think that at the end of the day, the biggest piece to using AI in public speaking or any sort of presentation is you don't just take it verbatim. You use your own words, your own thoughts. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just being authentic, relatable, be yourself, but use it as a tool. And one thing we always say here at Effective Presentations is your slide deck and all your visual aids, they are the side salad. You, as the presenter, are the filet mignon. You are the main course. Don't let the PowerPoint or any of the AI generated stuff overtake your message. You are in control of the message. You are the one delivering it. You are the main course.
Would you say that we should treat AI like a starting point?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And to your point before, not putting all your stock into it and not reading it verbatim, but using what you feel resonates with your message and then get rid of the fluff. Because many times I've found even if you ask it to be brief, it's going to give you a lot of, filet mignon. It's going to be a lot of fat hanging out there.
Yeah, and fat's delicious in steak. But anyway,
Fat is where the flavor's at. So, but
that's
sometimes it's
right.
too much.
That's right. But yeah, absolutely. Use it as a tool. It's not the main presentation. It's just a tool to help aid your presentation. And this is where it starts to get pretty interesting with people using AI all the time, at least what I'm foreseeing in the future and kind of just predicting. I don't think you can really predict communication in humans, but I do see public speaking skills starting to come down. They're not going to be as effective now that we have a lot of AI technology doing the thinking for us. And that's something I'm kind of worried about as a teacher for public speaking. I don't know if I'm worried or happy because it's going to probably generate us business in the long term, but it's something where you can't use AI as your presentation. You are still the important piece there. You're the relatability. We still need to connect somehow. AI can't connect with humans. It's artificial intelligence. Artificial. It's not intelligence, it's artificial. And I think that's one key piece a lot of people misunderstand. They think it's going to be having a conscious one day, and who knows, maybe it could. That's kind of getting really into the weeds of the sci-fi area of AI. And that's not something I do think about it. I'm lying. I don't want to say I don't think about it, but it's something that could happen, but I don't like to dwell on it because I think it could be for the better or for the worst.
Do you think it's at this point, when we apply it to presentations, a blessing and a curse at the same time?
I do, because I think as we develop more with AI, we're going to see communication skills start to get worse and worse. And that's kind of my fear with it, but also it's a blessing because now you can create an entire slide deck in 10 seconds by putting one prompt in. So it's good and bad. I
Yeah.
think yeah, it's kind of hard to quantify both sides of it because there's so much to it. It's a broad
I almost see
question.
it as it's great in that it's your springboard. And instead of hyper focusing on your content, you can go through what it generated for you and clean it all up. And now you can more focus on remembering it, presentation, where you're not so obsessed with, the content. But on the flip side, it sounds like you're saying that many of us might just rely on that and become almost robotic in our presentations, which is not the goal.
Yeah, and there's some really cool features with it too. I know a lot of the video program record or video conferencing programs, they now have AI integration. So you can look at a entire transcript of a presentation, and what AI will do is it will generate you a summary on exactly what was said in that meeting. And this is fantastic,
Mm,
especially if you get somebody that just goes on a tangent when they present and they set a meeting for 30 minutes, but they go an hour. Well, you no longer have to kind of listen to that meeting the entire time. You could just take the notes from AI and you're saving yourself a ton of time. So there's a lot of good with it.
sure.
And I
Mm.
like what you said. It's a springboard. It's a starting point for presentations, I would say. I completely agree with that, Steve.
And that's a great point too, in terms of the notes, where it can transcribe exactly what was said, or it can surmise what's going on. Side note, I don't know if you've ever seen, and I think it's connected to Google. It's called Notebook, and you can generate a podcast, male and female talking. It's uncanny. It's the first time I can actually say it sounds real. Just the way they respond, the way they stop, they might jump on the next person. Oh yeah, that's a really great point. It's almost scary how real it sounds. If you go to the Notebook, Google, and generate something in a podcast, it's actually kind of funny checking out what it sounds like.
That is interesting. I'll definitely have to take a look at
Yeah,
that. It's kind of that stuff kind of scares me because then you start to question, am I listening to a real person or is this AI? And that's kind of where you get into that's where you start to get into the doomer view of AI, I would say.
yeah. Great talking with you today. Love all the insight and the reminders and all of this. How do we find you, Jordan? How do we connect with you?
Thank you, Steve. Connect with me. Come to effectivepresentations.com. Take a look at some of our courses. If you want to improve your public speaking skills, we can definitely get you more comfortable, more confident. It's probably one of the best workshops you'll ever take in your life, and that's backed up by our reviews. And we're almost at 700 five-star reviews, which is unheard of. So come check us out. If you want to schedule a time to chat with me, you can find me on our website.
Awesome. Great talking with you today. Appreciate all of it. And looking forward if we get a chance to get together soon.
Absolutely, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jordan. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.